Welcome to the wars you've never heard of. The Anglo-Zanzibar War, fought in 1896, holds the record as the shortest war in history, lasting between 38 and 45 minutes. The conflict erupted when Sultan Khalid bin Barghash ascended the throne of Zanzibar without British approval, following the death of Sultan Hamad bin Thuwaini. The British, backing their preferred candidate, Hamad bin Mohammed, issued an ultimatum for Khalid to step down. When he refused, British warships bombarded the palace. Within minutes, the palace was destroyed and Khalid fled, leading to a swift British victory and the installation of their chosen sultan. The Football War, also known as the Soccer War, was a brief but intense conflict between El Salvador and Honduras in 1969. Triggered by national tensions exacerbated by World Cup qualifying matches, the underlying causes included issues of land reform and immigration. Hostilities erupted when Salvadoran military forces invaded Honduras. The war lasted only 100 hours, resulting in significant casualties and displacement before a ceasefire was negotiated by the Organization of American States. The conflict highlighted the deep-seated socio-political issues between the neighboring countries. The Pig War was a border dispute between the United States and the British Empire in 1859, centered on the San Juan Islands. The conflict began when an American settler shot a British-owned pig that had wandered into his garden. This seemingly trivial incident escalated into a military standoff, with both sides dispatching troops to the island. Fortunately, cooler heads prevailed, and the dispute was resolved peacefully without any loss of human life. The boundary was eventually settled in favor of the United States, highlighting the absurdity and tensions of territorial disputes. The War of Jenkinsia, 1739 to 1748, was a conflict between Britain and Spain. The war's peculiar name stems from an incident in which Spanish Coast Guards severed the ear of British Captain Robert Jenkins, who later presented it to the British Parliament as evidence of Spanish aggression. This outrage led to a declaration of war by Britain. The conflict was part of the larger War of Austrian Succession and primarily took place in the Caribbean and Georgia, with significant naval battles and raids marking the hostilities. The Emu War was a bizarre conflict in Australia in 1932, where the military was called in to curb the population of emus wreaking havoc on farmland in Western Australia. Despite using soldiers armed with machine guns, the emus proved surprisingly resilient and difficult to control. The military's efforts were ultimately deemed a failure, leading to an embarrassing retreat and leaving the emu population largely intact. The Emu War remains a curious example of the challenges of wildlife management and the resilience of nature. The War of the Stray Dog, or the incident at Petrich, was a brief conflict between Greece and Bulgaria in 1925. It began when a Greek soldier chased a stray dog across the border into Bulgaria and was shot by Bulgarian troops. In retaliation, Greece invaded Bulgaria, leading to a brief but tense military engagement. The League of Nations intervened, and both sides agreed to a ceasefire, with Greece withdrawing its forces and paying reparations to Bulgaria. This conflict underscores the volatility of border tensions and the importance of international mediation. The Paraguayan War, also known as the War of the Triple Alliance, was fought from 1864 to 1870 between Paraguay and the Allied forces of Argentina, Brazil, and Uruguay. This devastating conflict resulted in immense loss of life, particularly for Paraguay, which suffered significant casualties and economic ruin. The war began over territorial disputes and escalated into one of the bloodiest conflicts in South American history. It ended with a decisive victory for the Triple Alliance and had a lasting impact on the geopolitical landscape of the region. The Cod Wars were a series of confrontations between the United Kingdom and Iceland from 1958 to 1976 over fishing rights in the North Atlantic. Iceland extended its fishing limits, leading to disputes and skirmishes at sea as British trawlers continued to fish in these waters. The conflicts involved ramming incidents and the deployment of naval vessels. The Cod Wars ended with Iceland successfully extending its exclusive fishing zone to 200 nautical miles, setting a precedent for maritime boundaries and significantly impacting international fishing policies. The Pastry War was a conflict between France and Mexico in 1838 to 1839. It began when a French pastry chef in Mexico City claimed Mexican officers had damaged his shop, demanding compensation. France backed the claim and, when Mexico refused to pay, blockaded Mexican ports and seized the city of Veracruz. The conflict ended with Mexico agreeing to pay the indemnity, illustrating how seemingly minor incidents could escalate into international disputes and the lengths countries would go to protect their citizens' interests abroad. The War of the Oaken Bucket was a conflict between the Italian city-states of Modena and Bologna in 1325. The war started when Modenese soldiers stole a wooden bucket from a well in Bologna, an act that led to the Battle of Zappolino. This battle was part of the larger rivalry between the Guelphs and Ghibellines, factions supporting the Pope and the Holy Roman Emperor, respectively. The Modenese emerged victorious, and the bucket remains a symbol of their triumph, still displayed in Modena today. Thanks for joining us for 60 Seconds of History. Stay tuned for more quick dives into the past,